I think this is an excellent problem in helping you understanding what the null space is and what it does on an intuitive basis. Reading the null space is a very helpful skill from the conceptual point of view. You probably don't get to do it often in practice. In practice, the problem happens in the opposite direction. It presents you with a matrix and you have to determine its null space because you're probably solving a linear system involving that matrix. But doing it in reverse will really help you understand null spaces on an intuitive basis. So here we go. We will do it by literally reading what the expression is telling us. It might not tell us anything that we want to know right away, but maybe something will click with us and we'll see that it's really telling us what the sum of the entries in each row is. Okay, so let's go. Let's look at the first element of the null space and just literally, in a very boring way, say what it is saying. And it's saying that the first column plus twice the second column plus 3 times the third column plus 4 times the fourth column equals 0. And to me, it's not saying much on an intuitive level whatsoever. So I'm just going to abandon the first element of the null space and move on to the second linearly independent element of the null space. And this one is telling me that the first column plus the second column plus the third column plus the fourth column equals 0. Now that's a little bit more palatable, right? It's saying something interesting. That the sum of the 4 columns is 0. Doesn't that tell you that if we add just the first entry in each column, we'll get 0? Of course it tells you that, right? But the first entry in each column is another way of saying row 1. So row 1 adds up to 0. Row 2 adds up to 0. Row 3 adds up to 0. And row 4 adds up to 0. Each row in this matrix adds up to 0. And we see it from this element of the null space right here. Isn't that nice? By looking at the null space, you can say something interesting about the matrix. In fact, the null space is a very interesting characterization of what the matrix is. I also see something interesting in the third element of the null space. What is it saying? It's saying that the first column plus twice the third column equals 0. Let's solve for this. And we see that the first column is minus twice the third. So another interesting piece of information that you can get out of the null space. So that's reading the null space.